This is the Honda Civic Type R, and it shows how Honda is the master of front-wheel drive high-performance cars. This isn't the first time we're driving the Civic Type R, since we already did a comparo with the Subaru WRX STI from a few years back, which you can see the written review via the link below. Pero ngayon, this will be the first time I'm keeping the Civic Type R for a much longer duration. And as a result, I've been reminded once again of how magical the Civic Type R actually is, especially when you keep this car on a much longer term. And this Civic Type R actually begs the question, if you can only own one car for your entire life, what car would that actually be? For me, chances are, that could be this Civic Type R. Here's why. I swear I really enjoy driving the Civic Type R. It's still, even after a few years since it debuted, it's still one of my favorite. One of my dream cars actually. Nasa top 5 dream cars ko pa rin siya. And driving it again after 2 years, it's bringing a lot of memories for me. So we compared it last time to the WRX STI and we picked this over that car. Hanggang ngayon I still pick this over the STI pa rin, no? The gear shift, the 6-speed manual is just so slick. Sobrang ganda nung throws niya. The clutch is still light. I really think na ang light ng clutch ng Civic Type R, and it's on the high side yung biting po niya, pero okay lang. It's light naman. It's really light. Lighter than the Mazda MX-5 pa. And I'm really enjoying the steering feel. It's super sharp, especially even more so in sport mode and R mode. The engine just pulls so hard. There's minimal turbo lag, or pretty much non-existent if you put it in sport or R mode. The steering is really sharp. It weights up kapag you put it in sport or R mode. Gosh, grabe. And the adaptive suspension, even if you put this car in sport mode, ang ganda pa rin ng suspension niya. Okay, medyo may pagka-firm talaga siya because of the low profile 20-inch tires. 20-inch wheels din. That engine, by the way, which is a 2-liter inline-4 VTEC turbo motor, doesn't exactly produce the best sound. At higher revs, maganda naman ang tunog niya, though it's nowhere near the oral pleasure of the high-revving non-turbo VTEC engines of before. But then, ganon talaga eh. The nature of turbocharging has made engines much more quieter than before. Pero there's no denying how tractable and linear its power and torque delivery is, since there's plenty of pull on almost the entire rev range. And that's something you can't say sa mga previous non-turbo VTEC engines, wherein all of their torque are at the higher RPM range. And speaking of the Civic Type R's ride, kahit ito'y naka 20-inch wheels with low-profile tires, the adaptive dampers make the most out of their long travel. Kaya even if you go through bumps, all 4 wheels still maintain contact sa kalsada, which as a result, its handling never gets upset kahit may madaanan kang lubak mid-corner. The car just feels so alive. The car just feels, the throttle response, especially in sport and R mode, it's really responsive. Wala kang turbo lag. Actually, the engine has so much torque, has so much pull. Even if you drive it on a highway, tapos let's say you're in 6th gear lang, you can still overtake other cars. So maybe not from 70 to 100, you're lugging the engine by that point. Pero the engine is really usable on whatever rev range you are in. Ang sobrang ganda ng pakiramdam niya. And I swear, I really have to respect Honda for being, one of the only car brands left to put a manual in their high-performing hot hatch, like the Civic Type R. The tires grip so well. There's really not much. There's actually no body roll. Not even not much. There's none. Especially when you put the car in R mode. And more importantly, being a front-wheel drive hot hatch, you would normally complain, or I would normally complain about torque steer.
Because, you know, yun, kapag dumingin ka sa gas, usually, as you exit the corner, meron kang kalaban na torque steer niyan. Ramdam mo yung kapag nag-floor ka sa gas, lalaban yung steering wheel sa'yo since, of course, the front wheels are doing two things simultaneously. Turning the car, and syempre as you step on the gas, syempre ang action ng kotse is to go forward. And that problem with cars with so much power na front wheel drive ay torque steer. But with Honda, they've done some magic trickery stuff, you know, such as a dual axis strut front suspension, the limited slip differential na as you enter and exit through corner, you don't have torque steer. The car really feels neutral, really feels grippy. Honda's really mastered putting all that power down to the front wheels without any drama.
And this part then leads me to a good segue on why most car enthusiasts prefer rear-wheel drive over front-wheel drive cars. Katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, in a high-performance front-wheel drive car, the front wheels have to do two things: turning the car and also powering the car forward. Do both things all at once, and you also tend to suffer from understeer, since when you try to put the power down mid-corner, ang tendency syempre ng kanyang front wheels is to push the car forward in a straight line. But in a rear-wheel drive sports car, the only thing that the front wheels need to do is to point the car in the right direction. Here in the Honda Civic Type R, understeer under throttle has been greatly reduced, which as a result, nung lumabas ang kotseng ito, the Civic Type R became the fastest front-wheel drive car around the Nürburgring, clocking in at 7 minutes 43.8 seconds, which is a title it held until 2019. But who knows? The next generation Civic Type R will most likely regain that crown.
You really have to bring this car to twisty roads to enjoy it. You don't actually even have to drive it in illegal speeds to enjoy the Civic Type R. No! Some would say na, I won't enjoy the Civic Type R kasi ang bagal ng mga, syempre, may traffic, whatever, ganyan. Just find a good road, go to a province like, I don't know, Zambales or Tagaytay, going down Talisay. Dude, you have plenty of nice roads sa Pilipinas to drive cars with so much nice handling, you know, and this Civic Type R is one of those cars. And in a world of electrified cars, yung mga electric whatever na ganyan, manuals are really gonna disappear at some point. And as the world transitions to electric vehicles, just say goodbye to the manual. You don't even expect a car in the future to be, in the near long-term future at least. So these cars are meant to be cherished. These are one of those cars that should be treated with a lot of respect and a lot of dignity. If you don't know how to drive a manual, please study how to drive a manual. The moment we reach a point where cars are now electrified and of course they can't support a manual by that point, you're gonna be missing out a lot on what we used to think as fun. And the Civic Type R, along with other manual hot hatches and manual sports cars, they're soon gonna be, you know, a piece of history.
And then the magic of the Honda Civic Type R doesn't end there. Apart from being one of the best, if not the best front-wheel drive hot hatch out there, you have to remember that this is still a Honda Civic, which means it's still able to do Honda Civic kind of things. And you also have to remember that this is a hatchback, which in some ways is actually more practical than the Civic sedan. Behind the rear seats, you are offered with 420 liters of space. Pero dahil ito isang hatchback, mas malaki ang iyong trunk opening. And as a result, folding down the rear seats nearly gives you 1600 liters of space. And that's significantly more than what the Honda Civic sedan can offer with its seats folded. And then as for the rest of the interior, it's still basically as practical as the standard Honda Civic. It just so happens to have these lovely bucket seats. Oh, and this is also the first ever Type R to reach the Philippines, hence that production number. The Civic Type R's interior has certainly aged well, though obviously the all-new Honda Civic feels far more modern and much more premium. And while the infotainment system is considered good a few years back, It is now considered slow to respond by today's standards. And then of course, once again, being a Honda Civic, this Type R has plenty of space at the rear seats. Though weirdly enough, dalawa lang ang kanyang seat belts. And it seems Honda is trying to point out that only 2 people can sit at the rear seats. Hindi ko alam ang dahilan, but at least they have excellent amounts of head and legroom. And then of course, we also have to talk about the Honda Civic Type R styling. Back in 2018, nung unang lumabas ito, sobrang gopong-gopo sa kanyang itsura, with its large 20-inch wheels, wide stance, along with its rear wing and rear vortex generators. I was a fan of its too fast, too furious kind of design motif. Now though, I think the design didn't age well. Siguro it's due to its sheer amount of fake vents, or maybe because the Subaru WRX STI looks far more subtle, or it can also be the fact na sobrang umay na ako sa mga peking Civic Type R sa kalsada natin. So here's one tip para hindi kayo maloko. Since the non-Civic Type R hatchback was never sold in the Philippines, your surefire way to tell that it's the real Civic Type R is dun sa kanang rear wiper. At least until we reach the low point where even the rear wiper has been copied in the Civic sedan. And then lastly, dahil nga ito isang Honda Civic pa rin, the Civic Type R is still perfectly drivable on a daily basis. Magaan ang kanyang clutch, the shift quality feel of the 6-speed manual is one of the best in the auto industry, it rides relatively well even on rough roads, which is unlike the Subaru WRX STI by the way. Oh, and fuel economy is actually really good on this hot hatch. At 11.8 kilometers per liter, hindi siya nalalayo sa normal na Civic RS Turbo, which means even in terms of fuel economy, you're not actually paying more to run this car. Such is indeed the magic of the Honda Civic Type R.
It really feels alive, this car. It really connects to you emotionally. I swear, it's really enjoying. I don't even know how many times I've said the word I swear, but gosh, I'm really enjoying this car. I can't wait for the next generation Honda Civic Type R, you know. They're promising a lot of things, and based on Honda's track record with those stuff, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a really good car.
And then this all leads me back to my original question. If you could only own one car in your entire life, and based on my wants, syempre I want the car to be fast, usable on a daily basis, and yet be practical and roomy enough to carry my loved ones, my groceries, the furniture, or even the gaming PC stuff that I'm currently doing right now. Yet at the same time, put an absolute smile on my face every time I start driving this car. Apart from a high-performance wagon like an Audi RS6 or maybe a Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo, which let's be honest I won't be able to afford, one of my realistic and accessible answers to that would be this Honda Civic Type R.